tonight I'm going to be making some smothered chicken and gravy. I'm using chicken thighs. I'm going to be making some mashed potatoes to go with it, and also a little bit of rice because Booger is here and he doesn't like mashed potatoes, so I'm going to make him some rice. I'm using chicken thighs. I'm getting down to the bare bones of my cabinet in my refrigerator. I desperately need to go to the grocery store, and the way that I know it's desperate is that I have no onions. But that's okay, because I'm going to show you how to make a gravy without onions if you're one of those people that doesn't like onions. So I'm going to start off. I've got 4 chicken thighs in here, boneless chicken thighs, but you can certainly use bone-in. I've used bone-in, and I prefer that for this recipe, but I'm out of them. So I've got 4 boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I've got a little bit of olive oil on it, and then salt, pepper, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder. And it's definitely got onion powder because I'm out of onions. So I'm just going to go over here to my pot that's heating up, and we're going to sear these real good. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of water in there. Yeah, it's almost hot enough. That's how I check to see if the pot's hot enough if I'm searing stuff. You just drop water in there, and if it goes, it's gone real quick. It's definitely hot enough. We've got our squash over here that we cooked earlier, and as you can see, a lot of it's gone because I've been eating it. It was really good. So I'm going to toss these around in here and make sure that they're all coated in the seasoning and oil. Let's see. And I'm going to just brown them in here. You want to make sure that your pan is hot enough and that you don't overcrowd it so that it starts to steam the meat instead of browning it, because that's what makes your gravy, is all that seasoning and meat stuff that gets stuck to the bottom of the pot. That's what makes your gravy, if you're not using a packet gravy or something out of a package, you know. So I'm just going to let these sear real good on both sides, and I'm going to wash my hands. Alright, so our chicken has browned. I'm just going to put a little Worcestershire in there. Just going to coat that chicken in it and let it... Hold on. That's Drew but Breezy. I got to let him in.
You better get your tail in this house, mister.
Alright. So I put a little bit of Worcestershire in there. And I'm just going to make sure the chicken's coated in it, and cook it for a few minutes. Y'all, I'm serious, it is bad when I'm out of onions. That means that I have to go to the grocery store tomorrow. The only thing worse than me being out of onions is when I run out of rice. When I run out of rice, somebody send a search party, because I never run out of rice. I can't remember how many times I've run out of rice in the last year. I always have rice. So if I'm ever out of rice, something's terribly wrong. Alright, so I'm just going to get our chicken out. I let that cook for about 3 minutes. Just to let that Worcestershire cook a little bit. To me, if Worcestershire's not cooked a little bit, it's very strong. And I'm not real fond of just raw tasting Worcestershire, so I cook mine a little bit. I'm going to put some flour in. Let me get a measuring cup. Y'all, I usually do not measure hardly anything when I cook, but doing this has made me measure my stuff and actually get recipes, which is great, because me and my grandmother had planned to make a cookbook together years ago, and we did a little bit with it, but we didn't have any measurements, so now I got measurements. Let's see. I'm going to put a little flour. See if that's going to be enough. Get my whisk. And that needs a little bit more oil in there. See, whenever the flour just all bunches up like that together. So I'm going to put a little bit of bacon grease in there just to loosen up that flour. Not much, just a little bit. And I'm almost out of bacon grease too. It ain't looking good over here, y'all. I gotta get it together. Oh, booger. Alright, see, yeah, just enough to loosen that flour up. And I'm just gonna let that cook. I'm not gonna be getting it a real dark roux, because I use like a not a blonde roux with chicken, like a dark roux, not quite a peanut butter or étouffée roux. Like right before it gets to peanut butter étouffée stage. I am going to cook this until and see, it's already kind of brown because of the Worcestershire in there. So I can't really tell by the color, but you got to smell. It'll start smelling like roux pretty good, and I know that it's time to put my liquid in. I don't know how to describe the smell if you don't know what roux smells like. But there's stages of roux, you know. When it's like a blonde roux, you really don't smell it. And then when it gets just a little bit darker, you'll start smelling it. The different stages of roux smell different. That's really hard to explain if you don't, you know, make roux often or, you know, haven't made roux a lot. It's starting to smell like it, and it is getting darker. And I've got mine on pretty high, medium high. If you're not used to making roux, I wouldn't cook it that high, and definitely keep stirring it if you're going to cook your roux this high. Alright, that smells good to me. And y'all, I'm almost out of chicken broth too. So we're just going to pour that in there and deglaze that pan. And get my flat spoon. You just want to scrape the bottom, get all that good stuff up. And y'all, I know that packaged gravy is easy, but if you've never made real gravy before, please try it at least once. It is more work, but there is nothing like it. Gravy is like, it may as well be like our milk down here in Louisiana. I mean, may as well put it in our bottles. Everything's with gravy. But if you've never made your own gravy, you've only used the packages, please try to make it just one time. It'll change your view of gravy, I promise. There's just no comparison. Or I haven't had any packaged gravy that even comes close to real gravy. So we're just going to stir this and get all that stuff scraped off the bottom. And that's why I use a flat spoon. Put a little bit more chicken broth in here. You could also use a can of tomatoes in this. And it would be a tomato gravy, a red gravy. Just instead of putting the chicken broth in there like that, just put a can of tomatoes in, and you'll probably have to put a little water or chicken broth in that, in the tomatoes also. And then put your chicken in and let it cook. There's a dish called sauce piquant. That's kind of how it's made. And I promise it's good. Lord have mercy, that's my favorite thing to eat. Alright, so I'm going to bring this up to a boil. With a roux, you don't know... Excuse me. With a roux, you don't know how thick it's going to be until it comes to a boil. Like right now, it looks pretty thin, but it's not going to be that thin. When it comes to a boil, that's when you know how thick your gravy is going to be. So I'll put a little bit more, because I can tell already that's going to be too thick for what I want. I'm going to put my chicken back in here. And this is a very easy recipe. I guess if you've never really made a roux, it could seem like it's not easy. But once you get used to making roux and making your own gravy like that, it's like nothing. I mean, I could do it in my sleep, just because I'm so used to doing it. Alright. That looks like it's going to be good enough to me, but I am going to let it come to a boil for a second, just so I can see if I need to add more chicken broth. And I'm going to have to not make videos tomorrow and go to the grocery store, or I'm not going to have anything to make. I'm going to be making MacGyver meals. A MacGyver meal is something where you think there's nothing in the house to cook. Absolutely nothing. And you go in there and you find something in the cabinet, find something in the refrigerator, and you just throw something together and it's really good. Those end up being the best meals. But if I don't go to the grocery store, that's what I'm going to be showing y'all how to do is MacGyver meals. All right. Where's my top? All right, so I brought this to a boil. I'm going to turn it down to right below medium. And I'm going to cover it. I'm going to cover it and I'm going to let it simmer. Now with my chicken thighs, I cook them until they're fork tender. Till most of that fat's cooked out of it and they're tender like a roast would be. That's how I like my chicken thighs. But if you didn't want them that cooked, then you could certainly turn it off before then. That's just how I like chicken thighs cooked. But once again, I don't know how long I cook it for. I just cook it till I know it's done. But it's 350, so I am going to let you know how long it takes. And you are going to want to come stir this. You may have to turn your heat down a little bit if it's going crazy. But you do want to stir it and make sure that that's not sticking to the bottom because it will. And I'll let y'all know how long it is in a minute. All right, so while the chicken's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and get my potatoes ready. All I have is 6 gold potatoes. So that's what I'm going to be using. And I never measure my mashed potatoes either. I just taste it. And if it tastes like it has enough of everything, then good. But I will measure what I put in it this time to try to give you measurements. So like I said, I've got 6 yellow gold potatoes that I'm going to be peeling and cutting up and putting in a pot of salted water to boil. Alright, I've got my potatoes cut up. They were all pretty much the same size, so I just quartered them. However, with the size that you cut them up, it really doesn't matter. If you want them to cook faster, cut them up smaller. Really the only thing is to make sure that they're all pretty close to the same size so that they cook, they cook at the same rate. So I'm going to put these in my water, and I've always been taught to put your potatoes in cold water to start it off cold and then boil them. If that's not the right way to do it, then y'all do it the right way. But that's just what I've always been taught. I splash that everywhere. I have made such a big mess on this stove today. I know I can't be the only one that does that. I just know it. Alright, so I'm going to turn that on high and let my potatoes come to a boil till they're fork tender. And I'm going to stir my gravy, make sure it's not sticking. And it's not, and that's a really pretty gravy. I wish y'all could see that up close, like in real life. It's a pretty gravy. Alright, so I'm going to check my chicken. It's been 30 minutes. And what I do is I just take my spoon and kind of twist it like this. And if it just falls apart, then I know it's ready. That's how I like it. But like I said, you don't have to cook yours that long. I just like mine so that it's kind of like a roast. Alright, I'm going to check my potatoes. And they're done. I just cook my potatoes until they're fork tender. So I'm going to go over here and drain my potatoes. Alright, so my potatoes are done. And y'all, this weather is so crazy. Everything was frozen last week, and I just had to go put shorts on because it's so hot down here right now. It's just crazy. But anyways, my potatoes are done. Oh, and the people with the chainsaw and the weed eater, they finally stopped it. Somebody heard my prayers. But anyways, I've got my potatoes, and now I'm going to try to find out how much to put in here. So bear with me. I've got about 3 tablespoons of butter. Okay, let's do some sour cream, and let's see, I've got, this is 1/4 of a package of cream cheese, so 4 into 16 would be 4 ounces of cream cheese, and I'm gonna start with 2 tablespoons of sour cream. Now, usually I when I'm making mashed potatoes, I do them in my stand mixer. We actually don't eat mashed potatoes that much at my house because everything's rice. Oh, hold on. Speaking of rice. Okay. Speaking of rice, the rice is done. But we don't eat mashed potatoes that much at my house because we eat rice with everything. So really, I only make mashed potatoes a few times a year. And when I do, I'm making a bunch of them. So what I do is I put them in my stand mixer and just beat them in the stand mixer. But I don't have that many, so I'm not going to be getting all that out just for that. So I'm just going to do them by hand. I do not have a potato masher, but if you have a potato masher, you go right ahead and get that potato masher out. What is it, baby? So I'm just going to be doing this by hand without a potato masher. I'm just going to mash them up with my spoon first, and then I'll get my whisk and mix them up a little bit better. Making them like this, they're not going to be as smooth as if you did it with a mixer or a potato masher, but that's okay. They'll still taste good. And I usually use the gold potatoes when I'm doing mashed potatoes or roasting potatoes, and also my smothered potatoes. I also like red potatoes when I smother my potatoes. Usually the only thing I use the big brown potatoes for is for bacon, a baked potato. I much prefer the gold and the red. They just, I think, have a smoother texture. They're just like real buttery. So, but you use whatever potatoes you want. Alright, let's see. Alright, so we'll put a little bit of salt and a little black pepper. And I'm just going to whisk this together. Not really whisk, I'm going to mash it with my whisk, I should say. And you can certainly put no sour cream or more cream cheese or less cream cheese, less butter to do this. I mean, there's been plenty of times making mashed potatoes. I put whatever I had. I didn't have much, but that's what I put in it. So, but these are so good. And I'm sure there's other people that make them this way. Alright, now I'm going to put just a little bit of half and half. I usually use heavy cream, but I'm out. See, I'm going to start with 1 tablespoon of half and half. I like my mashed potatoes thicker, firmer. But if you like them runnier or thinner, then you put more. And I'm going to put some more. Whoops. And I think that's going to be good. That looks like the texture and consistency that I like for my mashed potatoes. But like I said, if you like them thinner, put more half and half or cream in it. If you like them thicker, then put less. All right. Well, there we go. There you have it. They're pretty good. I'm going to put just a smidgen more salt. And yes, I licked the spoon, but I'm at my home. We drink after each other, so I don't think that's going to hurt. Alright, well there you have it. Just a simple smothered chicken and gravy. I'm serving it with mashed potatoes, but we usually eat it with rice, and Booger is eating it with rice, so you can serve it with either. I've also got some smothered squash, so I guess it's just smothered night, but I'm excited about it. This is very easy and cheap to make, but it is so good. The mashed potatoes are so creamy. You really don't even need gravy on them. If you don't have gravy, just make them by themselves, but the gravy does taste really good, so. And like I said, if you've never made your own gravy, all you've ever had is packaged gravy, please try making your own gravy one day. I promise you it's worth it. It's a little bit more work, but once you get used to doing it, it's really not a lot of work. And to me, I've never had a packaged gravy that even comes close to comparing to homemade gravy. So I'm gonna go eat this and mop the floor Thank y'all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.